What's a ham radio?
The Cadillac of ham radios.
Hello everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Ham Radio as Stranger Things podcast. We've got a great episode for you today as usual, but first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of, and I'm going to turn it over to Jasmin to let you know where you can find us on social media and where you can listen to the podcast.
Thanks, Ashley. You can find us on Instagram at Ham Radio Media, all one word, on Twitter at HamThrow, on YouTube at Ham Radio Media, or using our handle HamRadio1983. We also have a Discord you can join, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you have a fan theory or question you want to share, you can email us at hamradiomedia@gmail.com. Ashley also has a fanfic on AO3 entitled Stranger Things College, which is also linked in the description. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and much more. If you like the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review. We have a lot of totally tubular stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media to keep up with the podcast and all of our new content.
Hey everybody, so we're going to have a little fun today on this episode of Ham Radio Stranger Things podcast, because we are going to be talking about what futures and careers that we believe the Stranger Things characters will have. Now, we're going to pretend like whatever is going to happen in season 5 is not happening. We're just going based off of what we have so far on the show. Because, who knows? They might kill all of them off. We don't know. But anyway, we're going to be doing that. And we're also going to be giving some of our predictions for Stranger Things Day. And we'll also give you our spoiler-free reviews of the Beetlejuice sequel that just dropped, and really anything else that we can think of. So I'll go first with my thoughts on characters. Now we're going to be doing like the main characters, so we're just going to be doing the main kids, teens, adults. So I'll go first with Mike Wheeler. So I think it's safe to say that Mike will probably be an author or maybe a science teacher. I'd say like physics or like chemistry, but mostly probably physics, because that seems to be more of his speed. But he's also the dungeon master of, well, he wasn't, at least in season 1. And that's, you're basically a storyteller. And I look at Mike and I see, an author, maybe even a movie director. I don't know. But yeah, definitely author or science teacher. Then Dustin, look, this kid is a genius. He really is. Especially when it comes to engineering things. He, built on his own a radio tower. Come on. So I think he's going to be either a mechanical or computer engineer, maybe working for NASA or something. I don't know. And then Lucas, I think maybe follows the footsteps of his dad and becomes a soldier, or I could also see him, being an astronaut or also an engineer. Then Will, I think Will's is probably the most obvious out of all of these, but come on, like he's going to be some sort of artist or illustrator for books, or maybe even an author himself, because I think he is also, in a way, he seems like a good storyteller as well. And then 11, Mike's wife isn't obvious. I'm just kidding. But no, I will say that 11's, even though, look, I do think that she will survive season 5, but yeah, I'll be honest with you, I'm not completely 100% sure, really what she really would be doing. But I really could see her wanting to, become an advocate for, maybe join, one of those groups who advocates on, an activist group for, children or maybe other people who grew up in similar conditions as she did. I'm not talking just about the superpower thing, but, maybe children who were, abused in their childhood, things like that. Or maybe, people who have mental conditions or, things like that. I think I could definitely see her wanting to help people in any way that she could. Or, I could also see her writing her own autobiography, and, about her story and, well, the MK Ultra experiments and kind of exposing Brenner's work and all that, and what she and the other subjects were subjected to. I could see her doing that as well. Then Nancy, I think another obvious one. I think investigative journalist in a big city. She loves to investigate things, which is probably why she's one of my favorite characters. Or maybe she, becomes an FBI agent or something and continues to investigate because she loves to do that. And then Steve, I know Jasmine's probably not gonna like this, but kind of like with 11, I kind of struggled to figure out where to place Steve's career path, because from what I've kind of seen in the show, even now in season 4, I love Steve, but he doesn't really seem to know what he wants in terms of a career. But I could see him being a pretty good police officer, or even a salesman. I do think he has enough charisma to be in sales. It's a matter for him of closing the sale. But those are kind of my two biggest ones for him. Robin, again, I think has what it takes to be successful in sales or marketing, or even, CIA agent, and not just, like undercover agent. I'm talking like, they do more than just that. She could be, interpreter for them, or, be part of like translation team or something like that. She's also very intelligent, so I think she could be a good analyst for them. Jonathan, professional photographer or movie critic. And then Max, I really will say this, it really depends on what becomes of her in season 5. And even if she does wake from her coma, if she's blind and paralyzed, if that's going to be permanent or not. But, I've seen a lot of talk about her obviously being like something to do with skateboarding. Okay. But I'm not saying that she still can't do that if she's blind or paralyzed, but I don't know. I could actually see her being a lawyer because, she is, pretty ballsy. She, I think, has what it takes to do that. And I think a lot like 11, I think she would want to advocate on someone's behalf. And I think she also just knows how to argue very well with people. And then this last one, Joyce and Hopper, just little really funny thing, just living their best life in the nursing home together. So that's all of mine. Jasmine, what about yours?
Yeah, I think on some of these we're in agreement, whereas in others I kind of went a different direction. For Mike, I think my thoughts are similar. I see him being either a middle or high school science teacher, taking after Mr. Clark. For Dustin, I was thinking computer scientist, so either working maybe for like Microsoft or Apple in like the early days. That's a connection him and Susie have, so I can see both of them, like maybe one of them either they work for the same company or kind of rival companies. That's when that stuff was really getting off the ground. So I see them as, people who would be kind of at the forefront of like those companies, like, when they were kind of coming up. which would evidently make them very wealthy in the future, which I would love to see for them. For Lucas, I was thinking either basketball player or sports announcer or, a sports talk show host, those kind of announcers where, you hear, you're on the air with Lucas Sinclair, something like that. I could see him kind of parlaying his love of basketball into a career, either maybe playing professionally for a time or kind of parlaying that earlier into an announcer or talk show host, that kind of thing. For Will, I agree. I think him being an artist is pretty clear. I kind of see him having his own gallery and, teaching art classes, somewhere in a big city like New York. And I see pretty much, maybe apart from Mike, I see the rest of them probably moving to a big city at some point, just, for more opportunities. And I mean, after everything they've been through in Hawkins, I could see the desire to kind of, get out and do, kind of bigger, better things. For 11, I also agree. I think she's going to make it through season 5. I could see her being an engineer, because I feel like she's got a lot of the skills that an engineer would need. And I think that's something that might interest her. We see her working on the diorama, and she appears to have an interest in models. She's very good in math and science. That was pretty much all they seemed to cover at the lab in terms of lessons. And those kind of brain puzzles and like teasers and stuff with all the weird kind of lessons and experiments. So I feel like a lot of those skills you need for different types of engineering. And she's somebody who would, I think, take on a leadership role in something that she's good at very easily, and is not somebody who would, she's not a person you can kind of talk down to or control easily. And so I feel like she'd be very good at kind of, leading an engineering team. And then Nancy, agreed. I think she's going to be a journalist. I could see her writing for the New York Times. I think, Nancy is an incredibly ambitious character. And so I think, if she's going to aim for something, she's aiming for the top, she's going to the best school. She's getting early acceptance. She's going to write for the big time. She's going to, be the big star reporter. So I definitely think that she's going to be doing something like that. For Steve, I've heard a few different theories. I've also seen other people talk about, okay, he could make a good police officer, or maybe he'll stay in, sales, or something like that. For me, I could see him being, I think those are both good possibilities. For me, I could see him more going to coaching, like sports coaching, maybe starting off with little league and semi-pro and rising, through the ranks. Because I was thinking about this, and it's true in season 4. We don't really see him indicate, that he's kind of decided on a direction, but I was thinking, what are the two things that Steve loves in life? Sports. He was a varsity athlete, and for all his complaining, being a babysitter, being being around kids. So I feel like coaching is a good, would be something that combined both of his passions, and maybe he takes, a teaching degree or something. So that's kind of what I saw for him. And then for Robin, I would say either professional translator or interpreter. At this point, she speaks, 5 or 6 languages. Those people are always in very, very high demand, translators, interpreters. So I could see her either running her own company or being part of a larger company. Because, being able to translate between multiple languages, especially very different ones, is a skill that's very, very highly sought after. And then for Max, this obviously depends on, her fate in season 5, but for all of these, I kind of presume that the characters are going to live and, get better, so to speak, and that, they're going to make it out of season 5 and have a life beyond that. So for Max, I could see her being a professional skateboarder who later runs her own skateboarding school. So, in the 90s is kind of when Tony Hawk came up and the professional skateboarding world exploded. And for those of you who don't know a lot about professional skateboarding, his dad actually was one of the founders and organizers of the major competition in skateboarding. And so there was this whole thing when he was coming up about how, is it favoritism, is it blah, blah, blah. But they basically had to create their own competitions because they didn't exist. And his family was a big part of getting that professionally recognized to the point that it's now considered a professional sport. And that all happened in the 90s. So this would be happening right around the time that Max is kind of, becoming an adult. So I think that she's poised perfectly to take advantage of, the professional skateboarding world that came out of the 90s. It is now a huge industry. So I think she's right on the cusp there. So she's perfectly timed to do that. And then for Jonathan, this is, presuming he, they go in a positive direction for him. We don't really know where he's going at this point. But, based on what we've gotten so far, I would say professional photographer. I mean, if you'd asked me prior to season 4, I would have said 100% professional photographer. We didn't see him pick up a camera in season 4, so I'm like a little less certain on that. But I think if he doesn't go into professional photography, I think either book reviewer or music critic, because we know he's a big reader. He seems to have, kind of more deep, I guess deep's the wrong word, but more like, kind of nuanced literary taste than maybe some of his peers. He reads Vonnegut, that kind of thing. Maybe music critic, because he's really into music. And we see him talk about it a lot. So I could see him doing something like that, or maybe a combination of the two to kind of support himself. For Joyce and Hopper, I can see them, joining, or I guess returning to the Hawkins Police Department. Joyce is a detective, Hopper is chief of police, kind of living their best life out together. I love their scene in season 3 when she's like, Detective Byers has a nice ring to it. And I remember talking to a friend that I watched with at the time after we watched season 3, and she was like, I was really sad they killed him off. Like, I think it would have been better just to see them, being detective in chief at the police department and solving crimes. Like, I think that would have been so much more interesting than this whole, like, is he dead, is he not storyline. So I would love to see, kind of the beginnings of that maybe towards the end of season 5. So those were all of my kind of thoughts / predictions.
First of all, like some of these, like for Lucas and Steve, like I think are really good, and it really never even crossed my mind about to include, the sports element to them. I feel like sometimes I forget, that is relevant to them. But what I wanted to say about 11 real quick is, I can see her doing something in the engineering field or something, similar. I think a lot of times we, including myself, overlook the fact that she is very intelligent. It's just, unfortunately, because of really her childhood trauma, that and her upbringing and everything in the lab and how that went, that it kind of masks her intelligence a little bit. Well, not really a little bit. I mean, it really does, especially the first 2 seasons. But, we've seen her grow as a person throughout the seasons. But yeah, I would love to see her do something in the engineering field or technology field, something like that. Because I definitely think that she is intelligent enough, and you're right, she does kind of hold her own ground and doesn't really let people push her around a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, I would love to see her in that. But that's really all I had really to say, other than like, yeah, I could see most of them except for maybe Mike and 11, moving away from Hawkins. Cause, I mean, like, would you want to stay there, your entire life? I probably wouldn't. But, so anyway, yeah, I'm gonna dive into my review of, the, Beetlejuice sequel. So a couple of these, Jasmin, I think we both agree with, totally. And the first one being, I thought the movie was hilarious, and, the whole cast, did a great job. I thought, Justin Theroux was so, funny, and I kind of knew from the get go that his character was slimy. But and I thought all around it was a good sequel. Winona Ryder was great as always. Though at times I couldn't help but think I was watching Joyce Byers, especially when there were a couple moments in the film where she was calling for her daughter, and all I can think of was her screaming "Will" at the top of her lungs. And actually, it was funny because in one of the first scenes that we see Lydia Dietz, which is Winona's character, somebody in the theater actually screamed out "Joyce!" Joyce. It was hilarious.
Oh my god, they did not.
Yeah, they did. I think it
Wow.
sounded like maybe not like super old, but I'd say like maybe in his early 40s, male who was he was kind of sitting like kind of towards the front. And he just screamed out Joyce. It was hilarious. And yeah, like I will say that. I mean, I guess it's because, I mean, I've watched a lot of Winona Ryder films throughout my lifetime. So I knew who she was before Stranger Things, but it's like these days, like that is, a big role for her. And sometimes it was a little bit hard at times to say, no, this is not Joyce Byers here. But I think it's just because, you know, Winona is Winona. And so therefore she looks like Joyce, but
yeah, I felt that way too. Like when I was heading home, I was thinking about this, and it's crazy to think, like, for the good part of her career, like Lydia Deetz was the role she was known for, like that was what people recognized her as, and she said that herself, and that it's crazy that this role she took on later in life has basically eclipsed that. Bigger than Beetlejuice, bigger than Heathers is Joyce Byers. And it is hard to separate the two. Like, I feel like that is her legacy. Like, that is probably the character she will be best known for. And I think part of that is just the length of time, because those are all movies, whereas Stranger Things, I mean, is 5 whole seasons. Plus, I mean, thanks to unintended circumstances, something that was supposed to take, 5 years to do is taken 10.
Yeah.
So she's been this character for a longer period of time in the popular imagination, to the point that even if you haven't seen the show, you are probably aware, at least peripherally, that she is Joyce Byers,
Yeah.
And I also had to think of her being like, well, like, and I think anytime she plays a character similar to Joyce, there's always going to be that comparison. So even though Lydia predates Joyce, there's always going to be that overlap, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I don't think it's got anything to do with, she becomes her characters. I don't think it's that. It's just such an iconic character. And I mean, there are worse things. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to get quote typecast or pigeonholed into, first the weird girl, and then the mom role, like moms that save their kids from supernatural forces. I mean, pretty niche, honestly. Like, there are worse things to be pigeonholed into than those two things.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, oh yeah, but I was thinking about that too. I was thinking about that too, and I when I watched the premiere, when the season 4 came out, they did that premiere on TikTok. And when she was being interviewed, she was like, yeah, she's like, it's the two things that people, come up to me on the street for. They're either like, oh my God, Beetlejuice, or I'm Will's mom.
Yeah.
I'm Beetlejuice or I'm Will's mom. And she goes like, I'm so proud of that. Like, I love that everyone's like, oh my God, you're Will's mom. How much she loves that. So clearly it's something that makes her very happy, which is good. But yeah, I think that those two things are, and I think the fact that all of these roles, like if you look at her most iconic, Heathers, Beetlejuice, Stranger Things, these are all things that either took place or are set in the 80s. So it's all that same time period.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that also has an impact. Like if Stranger Things was set in a different decade, I don't know if it would be the same,
Yeah.
Because it's all the same time period.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, and the like aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
Is also very similar, right? So yeah, that occurred to me too. That is too funny.
Yeah, and even watching especially with this film, it just made me even more, it just gave me even more realization to just how versatile an actress that Winona is, because I mean, in this movie, she was hilarious. But I mean, there are times that, when it got serious, she's able to get serious. But she's, we see it with Stranger Things, especially in season 1. she can really get into that mom who is desperately searching for her missing child, or she's played a lot of really good dramatic roles. Like I remember that one that movie that she was in with Richard Gere, but it came out in like the early 2000s, late 90s. And then she was in Edward Scissorhands too.
Yeah, Autumn in New York.
Oh, yeah, but she's just a versatile actress. Like she can play really weird characters, really funny characters, really emotional characters, or she can do a combination of all of them. But yeah, I thought it was really good to see her again and all this. And I also loved they showed like the pictures of her as Lydia in the first Beetlejuice movie. And, for the most part, she still looks the same. But you can tell that she is obviously older. But yeah, I thought Winona was just great.
The thing that made me laugh, there were so many like little callbacks. Something that really made me laugh when they're at towards the end, where William Dafoe's character is talking, and they're like, "We even have a executive."
Yeah.
That made me laugh. Because that was clearly, both her and they're like, we've got
They just couldn't resist.
They just couldn't resist.
And it's like,
that made me laugh.
Two of the shows that are, two of the biggest, on there, and it was funny.
Yeah.
I liked that. It was, it was good.
Yeah.
Anyone out there is listening, you could probably fill in the gap if you haven't watched the movie yet. But yeah, I thought that was funny too. And so like the biggest thing I probably really loved about it was that it felt like a true sequel and not a regurgitation of the original, which, a lot of sequels these days of, iconic movies like this tend to be. But it still had some popular elements of the first film in there. But I think a lot of it paid homage to the first film, but it wasn't like, oh, we're just going to repeat the same beats as the first film and just call this a sequel. And that's probably the biggest thing that I loved about it. It felt like I was watching a new movie, but, just set in the Beetlejuice universe, which, I thought was really, they did a really good job with it. And then look, Jenna Ortega, I can't say enough about Jenna Ortega. I think, she's definitely, that it girl these days. She just absolutely nailed the performance. I actually wish she had more screen time. Cause I guess it's cause I'm such a big fan of her as an actress, but yeah, she nailed it. To me, I do compare her a lot to Millie Bobby Brown because I think they are two very talented actresses, especially, I think it's fair to say they're probably the more talented actresses of their generation, because every time I watch one of their projects, I know it always feels organic and like I never feel like I'm watching the same character every time. I always feel like I'm watching, Wednesday Addams to Astrid Dietz or whatever her last name is. So I never feel like I'm watching the same character each time. And it was just great because Tim Burton, who directed this film, also directed a lot of episodes in Wednesday. So for her not to really feel like I'm watching Wednesday and feel like I'm watching a Beetlejuice sequel, I think speaks very well of her and of Tim Burton. But yeah, I love Jenna Ortega, and she's definitely a big bright spot of the film. And here's another one you and I think agreed on about. They didn't use that much CGI. I love that they still kept a lot of the practical effects and, claymation of what they did with the original, which I know Tim Burton, that's what his thing is. That's what he likes to do. And so, I like that it felt pretty balanced actually in terms of CGI versus practical effects, which again I really enjoyed because again it made it seem more natural. Um, but I mean I think the only real true criticism I had of the film, like today when I watched it, was I thought that the Dolores subplot maybe fell a little flat. But maybe it's something that if they want to make a third film, they can pick up on that and go further into that. But yeah, I kind of thought like it was. I mean, again, I didn't watch any of the trailers or anything for this film leading up, but I did kind of hear kind of what it was going to be about. Um, and I don't know. I kind of felt like there was going to be a little bit more there. Than there was. I mean, the film was only like an hour and 45 minutes or something like that, which is actually a little bit shorter than I thought it was going to be. But, overall, I thought it was an excellent sequel to a classic film, and it's one that I will most definitely be streaming once it drops on streaming platforms, and I highly recommend everyone out there, if you haven't seen it yet, go see it. So my star rating for this is a solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think you and I had a lot of the same thoughts about this movie. I also really loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I think I was surprised at how funny it was because, like, I feel like there was a lot more humor in this one than there was in the original. Not that you know what I mean? Like, I love the original, but this was, I think, much more comedic than the original one was, to my memory anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, it was hilarious. Like,
yeah,
my friend and I were killing ourselves laughing.
Yeah. And I actually, as I thought it was really hilarious, and it was more comedic than the original, and I actually thought they were going to have a little bit more horror in this one than there was. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was very funny.
Yeah, and I feel like the reason they did that is because, like, in the original, it was about the gut punch. It was about, like, the shock value, right? Because that's, like, that's what made Tim Burton's films so edgy. Like, this was a time period where he was him and Quentin Tarantino were kind of the only two guys doing that, right? Whereas now that kind of stuff is very common. That kind of storytelling, the stuff that kind of weird and sort of bizarre stuff, right? Very common today, not very common back in the 80s, I think. Until the freak value, like the shock value of the film, the thing that makes it weird that you go back, makes people watch it, is all that stuff, is all of the kind of weird horror. Whereas I think and I think this was a smart choice, because they knew, A, if you've seen the first one, that's no longer going to be shocking to you, and B, if you've turned on a TV set or a tablet or if you have watched anything in the last 10 years, that shock value, that shock and awe is really gone. Because, people can do anything now with streaming, so that they knew that wasn't going to be shocking to people. They knew that wasn't going to be the hook. And so I think they decided to make the hook the comedy, and be like, yeah, we know this isn't shocking to you guys. We know we've got good actors to work with, so, we're going to lean into the comedy, which was surprising. And so I think that element of surprise worked. I walked out of the theater and I said to my friend, I was like, that was, like, surprisingly good. Like, you hear it's a sequel, you hope it's good, but, you don't know if it's going to be. I'd heard good things, but you're like, wow, like, that was surprisingly good. And I think that's, instead of having the horror be the shock thing, the thing that surprises you, they made it the comedy, which I thought was, like, a really good, stylistic choice. I thought that was really, that was a really good move. And yeah, I liked it too that it felt like a real sequel and not just like a regurgitation. There were a lot of great callbacks. I also really enjoyed Jenna Ortega's acting, so I also really enjoyed it. I thought her and Winona were, like, great together. I also was, like, pleasantly surprised that they didn't use a lot of CGI. I had seen some of the trailers, so I thought that they were going to be CGI, and they, as far as I could tell, they appeared to be claymation, which was cool. And they used a lot of practical effects of, like where they're showing something from behind, or they're physically, creating something and making it move, which I thought was really cool. Because I agree, it makes it more realistic in a sense. And, it kind of kept the same sort of vibe and feeling of the first one, which is great. Like I thought, I think if they had used a bunch of CGI, it would have felt very different, like too modern from the original, which I don't think was the goal. And honestly, I think there's only one scene in which I think they actually use CGI as far as I can tell. But I thought they did, it was towards the end, I thought they did a very good job of it. And I also liked that the moments where they did incorporate modern technology made sense. They didn't overdo it. Like a lot of sequels or updates to things, it's like they'll lean too hard into the modern technology. So I like that they didn't do that. They kind of only used it where it made sense to. So yeah, I had some of the same thoughts as well. Also, Catherine O'Hara was great. She had some of the best lines in this film. Some of the funniest lines went to her. That was just, watching her was just a delight, because in the first one, she's supposed to be the villain, right? It's her and Beetlejuice, right? You're supposed to hate the stepmom. He's Beetlejuice, you're supposed to find him equal parts funny and repulsive. And I like that in the sequel, you show that her and Lydia got into a place of, where they were actually close. And they could both kind of take a step back and be like, yeah, that was just kind of a rough time. And both of them were kind of awful to each other. And she was like, you were a real brat. And she was like, and she was real awful back then. I mean, she's horrible in the first one, but I like that they got to a place of of understanding and accepting each other, as they got older. And I like that, I thought that was a good choice of instead of having her being an antagonist once again, they instead show that they had moved on and evolved from that, and that she could appreciate what Lydia was going through and trying to be a good parent. And I like that she was really supportive and on Lydia and Astrid's side, and was like, where's that, that spunky, teenager that used to drive me up the wall, used to terrorize me. You need to find that girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really funny. And I loved, as adult, I loved Catherine O'Hara and Winona Ryder's interactions. They were just so good.
Yeah.
They played off each other really well. And to be honest, there were some scenes in the beginning that was kind of okay, that's a bit over the top. But then, as the movie wore on, I feel they kind of got into the groove. And I realized by the end of the film, I was like, oh, the reason this is so over the top is to set up the stuff towards the end. Because there was some stuff with her character, with Catherine O'Hara's character, that I'm I did not see coming. And I was oh. So yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. And as always, nobody does Weird and Wonderful like Winona Ryder and Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt they so became their characters. It was no time had passed.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for Beetlejuice, it just felt like he just walked off set yesterday. And I just love that. And I think Winona Ryder, the only thing is that, again, because she's played Joyce for so long, you could see parts of Joyce in her. But that's just because she plays that character so well. And William Dafoe was perfectly cast. He was perfect.
Yeah.
I was
it's a pleasant
my friend and I
surprise.
were laughing. Yeah, it was so funny. We were just laughing. We were cringing so hard and being oh my God. And I won't spoil this, but so my friend and I both share the same pet peeve. So, okay, so the thing that he does when they've all gathered? That is one of me and my friends' pet peeves. People who do that in real life, who there's a gathering of some sort and then they do something like that. Biggest pet peeve. So rude. So cringy. There is no justification for doing that. It's somebody else's thing. And I loved Catherine O'Hara's reaction, being what? No. Oh, but yeah, we were just talking about oh my gosh, oh. And the fact that Jenna Ortega just saw right through him, I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
Love the Danny DeVito cameo. That was good. I enjoyed that. And I didn't catch this one until I was scrolling on Tumblr, and people had done gift sets to the original. But the Black Plague callback was really funny. Was really good. Well, it's not funny, but it was good. I hadn't caught that because it'd been I mean, obviously years since I've seen the first one. But yeah, I didn't catch that at all. I was like, oh, this is actually a callback to something they brought up really briefly in the first movie. When they're asking him for Beetlejuice for his credentials, he brings that up. And so I suspect if I went back and watched the first one again, I'd probably catch more stuff like that. So I thought that was brilliant. And yeah, I definitely thought it was worth the wait. I would definitely recommend the movie. And it's, my feeling about it when we walked out was I'm like, yeah, like I get why they took 15 years to make that, because they wanted it to be good and they wanted it to, they wanted it to like actually be good. And the thing my friend and I were talking about was that like, clearly the actors must have signed on because they really loved the script.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of the people in that production needed the money. Like, none of the main cast. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because we were talking about this, and there's like, yeah, like I don't see any of these people signing on if the script wasn't like excellent, because none of them need the money. Like, I mean, they could all retire tomorrow if they wanted to. Like, this is like it clearly wasn't a money grab, which was nice. This was clearly something that they'd put a lot of thought and effort into. And they put a lot of work into the casting and the costumes and recreating everything. And you could just tell they'd put like a lot of time and energy and thought into doing it well, which is why it took so long to come together. So yeah, I really appreciated that, especially since I got to the theater about halfway through the previews. My friend was already there. And basically everything else, apart from this one weird looking movie, is that their advertising is coming out, is basically either a sequel or a spin-off of an existing property. I'm like, yeah, there's nothing original in this lineup.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this all looks really terrible, unnecessary, weird, and like not in a cool way, in like a, why would you do that way? So this is the only thing, even though it is a sequel, like you said, it felt like an original story. This is the only thing I've come across in stuff they're promoting now, apart from maybe the SNL movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the only other thing I've come across where I'm like, yeah, that looks good, I'm gonna go see that. But at least what they're advertising right now, I'm like, yeah, everything's just like a sequel or like another one or a spin-off, and it's so clearly a cash grab. Like, you can tell it's so clearly a cash grab by the studios that it just, like, it feels fake, it feels inauthentic.
Yeah. It's like,
and so,
like, one of the previews that I saw when I watched the movie today was for the Wicked movie coming out in November with Ariana Grande. And I mean, the trailer didn't really even move me. It wasn't even that thrilling, I mean, it's like, I was like, I think the play is actually probably better than what this movie is going to be. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to go and buy tickets as soon as they come on sale for that. I mean, it just yeah, I mean, yeah, the production looked good. I mean, just from the trailer, but yeah, I mean, nothing that they really showed really was like, except for, like you said, maybe the SNL movie really jumped out at me.
Yeah, me neither. And on the Wicked, like, I've actually seen Wicked. I saw, like, I've actually seen the play. Like, I saw, I think the last show with the original Broadway cast that came through Toronto, and my mom knew, got tickets. It was one of those, like, hey, somebody else couldn't go, we got to go with them. And the play, like, the Broadway play is amazing. But I couldn't even make it through the trailer, man. I've seen a few seconds of it. I was like, no, this looks terrible. I will not be going to see that. And there were so many things where I'm like, yeah, no, I've seen the original. The original was great. This looks awful. I'm not going. So, yeah, I agree. It just feels like everything is just like a remake or a sequel or another spin-off. And it's like there's nothing original. Yeah, it seems like there isn't that much out that's original, and it just seems like I don't know, it seems like a cash grab, but it's just like, I mean, I feel like if studios think that that's what people want, they've like clearly misjudged their audience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what people are looking for. We want original stories, not not this.
Yeah, it's just, it's unfortunate that there's not that many out there. And the ones that are out there that are actually, really good, people like to hate on them because they're good. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's, you know, thank goodness for people like Tim Burton and the Duffer Brothers who aren't scared to, put out original stuff. I mean, yeah, even though Stranger Things is influenced by a lot of stuff from the 80s, but it's really, I mean, if you look at it, it very much is an homage to things from that time period. It's not, I never really feel like I'm watching a carbon copy of any one thing when I watch it,
Yeah, me neither. It's like it's influenced by, but it's not a carbon copy, which is nice.
Yeah, so yeah, just go out and watch Beetlejuice. I mean, it definitely is going to be worth your time and your money. I mean, I went to the matinee showing because it's cheaper, but I mean, which I do that usually anyway. But yeah, I mean, I have no regrets of going to watch it again. Like I said, once it's out on the streaming platforms, I'm going to stream it because I mean, I want to rewatch it. It's really good.
And then of course there's also like Tudum, although I'm also not getting my hopes up for Tudum either. Maybe some minor stuff, but nothing. I don't think nothing like major until Stranger Things Day. Although hopefully it's better than last year, because last year was just, oh yeah, like Arnold Schwarzenegger introduced Linda Hamilton. It's like great that she's going to be in the show, but like nobody else from the cast was there. Like it just came totally out of left field. So hopefully better than that. Which is weird to me because considering in past years they'd done like, by this point for season 4 we had the teasers, like the little teaser trailers, I think. We did the little thing with the 4 with all the vines. We'd had, and I think this would have been the year before that, they had the cast for that virtual quiz thing, like during COVID. And so I was kind of surprised. I'm like, okay, you pulled this off during COVID. And then when these actors actually could have been present, you were like, nah, we're not going to do anything with them. Like, that felt like a letdown. So I think since last year, I know the focus on was pretty heavily on Bridgerton, and there was some stuff about Wednesday, I remember. And so I would expect this year, since they don't have Bridgerton, I guess Wednesday will probably be a pretty big focus. I would expect, and maybe I know they've been pushing stuff about One Piece and some of their other shows. So I would imagine they're probably going to highlight Wednesday and then some other shows that do really well for them or that people are really expecting. And then, yeah, I think the kind of the meat, the big stuff is going to come, for, Stranger Things Day. But who knows? We might be, pleasantly surprised. What do you think?
Well, anytime with these types of things, I always try to keep my expectations as low as possible, because I don't want to set myself up for, disappointment. And I kind of hope that when the Stranger Things broadcast channel posted that video of the 2 new cast members a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, well, maybe there is a chance that they can actually give us some real content at those events. Probably the closest thing would more than likely be more behind the scenes pics, or like you said, more, some cast interviews or something. But yeah, I'm not really expecting much. I mean, hopefully they prove me wrong and I'm pleasantly surprised, but I don't think that I will be. Again, I think it's going to be something what of a nothing burger, but I do think that Stranger Things Day, if we were to get an actual teaser for season 5, it would probably come then, because they can devote an entire day to Stranger Things, and because they've been filming, they actually will have content to share. It's just a matter of will they? Because like you said, I mean, I remember about this point during the filming of season 4, which, I mean, it took like a year and a half, I mean, almost 2 years for them to film because of COVID and everything. I mean, we got 4 teasers, which I know that was more thematic than anything because it's the 4 seasons and they're split in 4 different parts and all that. And so I do know that marketing wise, they like to do something different every season. And I think season 5 is no different. But yeah, I know Brendan, has told me several times that he's like, by this point, they could at least give us a 10-second little teaser. I mean, he's like, they have enough filmed, and we know they've already been in VFX, production and stuff. So I think if there's anything like that, it will be on Stranger Things Day. If not, then it'll probably be next year. But yeah, I don't have really big high expectations for Tudum. But again, I mean, they could prove me wrong. And honestly, I kind of hope that we do get something special saved up for Stranger Things Day, like a teaser, because again, that's a day solely dedicated to Stranger Things. We don't have to share that with any other Netflix property. And so they do always try to give us something special on Stranger Things Day. So I'm definitely manifesting at least a teaser for season 5 on Stranger Things Day. But yeah, I don't really have high hopes. I would love for at least a 10-second little snippet or something, but I really don't think we're going to get that. Again, we'll have to wait and see, but I think it depends on if they were to release their lineup, maybe we could see what time the Stranger Things stuff is supposed to come out, and what day, because Geek Week, takes place like 3 days, because, usually they'll save the best for last. But yeah, I mean, I know, not being negative Nancy, but I'm not, I don't have the high expectations.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It'd be great if we got stuff, but if they're gonna give us anything, I was expecting more like cast stuff than actual content. I agree. I think if they're gonna do a trailer or teaser, I think we're probably gonna get it for Stranger Things Day. I was just thinking about when we might see season 5, because since we left off at the end of March, to the end of last season, if they've got it filmed by the end of the year, I mean, and they've got enough of the visual effects done, I know prior to season 4, like they kind of, when they went to drop season 3, they dropped it on like July 1st, right? Because that's when a bunch of the action takes place in the show. So I think we see that season 4 kind of starts with spring break. I think the original plan most likely was to release it during spring break, during that time period, to the public. At least volume 1. I mean, I think the original plan was it was supposed to all come out at once during that time in March, right? Like, should have been that last week of March. And obviously that got delayed because of COVID, and then Netflix was being perfectionist, and Netflix was like, you need to stop editing, we gotta put this out, guys. So the volume dates made no sense. I mean, I guess the second one was July 1st, but it didn't really have any that was relevant to season 3. It wasn't relevant to season 4. So I would imagine that, with more regular filming now, that they're probably going to try and, go back to that. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, if they go back to that, then we would probably see, the first volume 1 drop either end of March or beginning of April. And then volume 2, maybe that would align, since we know there will likely be some time jumps. Maybe that will align with the next time jump. So it'll be like a month later, or something to that effect. So that would be what? Let's see, March, April, May, beginning of May. And so I was thinking, if they do decide to do that, then I think giving us the trailer on Stranger Things Day would make sense if it's coming out the following like spring. Because I was thinking about it, I'm like, well, if they waited any longer, then they missed the Christmas rush. They missed Stranger Things Day. They'd have to drop it in like January, which like I guess is fine, but it's kind of a weird time to drop a trailer. You know, most things don't tend to drop in January, so I think from a marketing perspective, they are doing that. I think it's likely we would get something for Stranger Things Day. Especially since last year's was such a letdown. Like the entire day, which like we didn't really get much, and then we got the episode title right at the end, but it was kind of a letdown compared to what they gave us for season 4. So I feel like, yeah, I'm hoping they do better this year, because yeah, last year kind of felt like a bit of a letdown, you know?
Yeah, I agree, and I know it's hard to really be too judgmental about last year, because I mean they couldn't film and all that, but I mean come on, like you could still at least do a graphic thing like you did for season 4. I mean it's not, I mean you can do that. I mean I could probably make that on Canva. I mean it's it doesn't, to me it doesn't really seem like it'd be that hard to go in it and have graphics make that. I mean, that did not require any writing or acting, because the strikes were going on last year, and I get that. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely have done that. And I really am surprised that, they didn't really do that for season 5 at all. But then I go back sometimes and I think about what the Duffer Brothers have said when talking about season 4, was that it's really like supposed to be part 1 of season 5. And so whenever I think back to that graphic that they posted in October of 2019 for season 4, I mean, you think about it, it had Hopper's cabin in there, and then it's covered like in the upside down and all that. And we didn't really see Hopper's cabin that much in season 4. And so I feel like a lot of that was supposed, maybe a lot of what we're going to see in season 5 was supposed to be in season 4, but again, things happened. They had to do things a little bit differently than they originally had planned. So maybe that's why, I don't know. I think right now maybe they're just more focused on filming the thing and getting it and knocking it out of the park, which I totally understand. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, if not Stranger Things Day, then it's not, I don't think it's going to happen. Anything's going to happen this year if not Stranger Things Day. But with them doing the marketing stuff already, like with the Bath and Body Works and the Polly Pocket things, I mean, I do feel like something is coming eventually, because that's usually what tends to happen. But I personally think that it's going to be split up into 2 volumes, season 5 is, because I think it's more of a Netflix thing. Because I know they're doing that with Outer Banks, season 4. Part 1's coming out in October, and then part 2 is in November. So I really think it's probably going to happen with Stranger Things, because again, that's just seems to be what Netflix wants to do these days. So therefore, I am hoping that we will get something on Stranger Things Day, like representing part 1, I guess, kind of my predictions.
Do you think we're ever going to get the table read video they kept saying was going to come?
Probably not. I mean, they're going to probably post it like right before the season comes out, or maybe even in that alleged documentary that they apparently they're going to be doing for season 5. So no, I don't think it's going to happen, Jasmin. If it hasn't happened already, I don't know if it will.
Yeah, because I remember like people were asking like table read, when, and people were like, "Oh, it's coming." Like the writers like actually responded. So I wonder if they're going to release it between volume 1 and 2 or something like that. Because I wonder if they were gonna, and either it's going to be included in the documentary, or I wonder if they were like, "Yeah, this gives too much away," because like the one they did for, I think this was for season 4, right? Like it didn't really give much away, but I don't know, maybe that's got something to do with it. That's all I can think of, because it's weird that they said it was coming and then it just never came. And now we're getting all this other behind the scenes content. Like, they're showing us stuff I didn't think they would show us, and they are. But they're not giving us other things. Like, I don't know, it's just weird. Like, they're giving us too much and not enough.
I mean, that's why I'm also so hungry for actual season 5 content to really officially kind of put season 4 really behind us, so that, you know, maybe we can talk about, have a little bit more positive discussion about, you know, the show. But yeah, I mean, I think that one day, Jasmin, like when we know, like when we get the release date of season 5, you know what we should do? We should just go and make like an episode, maybe 2 episodes, and just go through season 4 and talk about what worked and what didn't work, and just, you know, get it all out, let it all out before season 5. And then after season 5 comes out, and go, you know, was this better than season 4? Like, I think we should do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I mean, listen, it's gotta be, okay? It's gotta be better. Cause like, I mean, so much of that season did not make sense. And I think the problem is that, like, shows often have problems like that. And so if this was a regular thing, I don't think it would stand out as much. But because the production quality and the writing quality of seasons 1 through 3 was so high, and they don't normally make mistakes like that. Like, you don't normally have large continuity errors. You don't have things coming out of left field. You don't have the characters doing things that are out of character for them. With some exceptions, like there's the odd thing. But if I think back on the previous seasons, I mean, there's a handful of things. The only thing that really sticks out to me as a plot hole is what the heck was the goo in season 3. But that's the only thing that really sticks out to me, because there's other little things along the way, or things that, like, okay, in 2050 when this was filmed, they thought this was an okay thing to do, or it didn't occur to them that this was not okay, and now it's like, yeah, we would never do that today. There's a few things like that, but nothing super glaring, nothing you can really point to and go, ooh, that was really poorly done, or that's a big plot hole. But season 5 had a ton of that stuff, and I think that's the problem. It's the comparison, right? Because 1 through 3 didn't have that problem. It was great. And then 4 had that problem in a big way. Like, if it had just been one plot, if it had just been one thing, we would have been like, it still would have been bad, but it would have been like, all right, well, that's just, this one kind of fell off, but everything else was fine. It was like, nah, it was more than one. So I think that's the thing, is that normally this show is so careful and so good, and so the writing is so tight and so clean, and they don't waste any space. Like season 1 through 3, they don't waste any space there. All space is used well. And then season 4 was so bloated, and they did not use their space well, and the justification we got was, oh, well, we need more time to tell this story. But then season 4 came out, and you're like, but actually you did it. You could have cut these episodes in half, told the same story in a more condensed way. So that to me is, I've been thinking about this a lot as I've been rewatching, and I'm like, I think it's the comparison. But yeah, I agree. I think doing the episode would be awesome. And what I'm really looking forward to, honestly, is when we get the trailer, is doing our predictions. And then once the season comes out, doing our like follow up and being like, here's what we got right and wrong. Yeah, I love doing that for season 4. Yeah. I'm honestly so excited about that.
Yeah, me too. And that's why another reason why I'm really itching for a teaser, so that we can actually make real predictions and all that, and real judgments, really. Because, I mean, there's only so much that you can really judge about a behind the scenes photo with no editing or anything like that. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that as well, because look, there's a lot of things we got wrong with season 4. I mean, like a lot that.
But there's a lot we got right too. I mean, like, yeah. There's a lot of things where we got right, or even we didn't. I feel like there's a lot we got wrong, there's a lot we got right, but there's also lots of things in the middle where, like, we were like, okay, something is up here, and we thought something was going on, and we guessed the wrong thing, but we were right that something was going on. which not everybody else caught. So, I mean, I think we need to pat ourselves on the back a little bit more because, I mean, I'd have to go back and re-listen to those episodes, but I feel like it was pretty, I wouldn't say it was even, but like there was a lot of stuff that we got right, or we got at least the right idea. And then, yeah, there's a lot of stuff we got wrong as well, but I don't know, I feel like we need to give ourselves more credit.
It's true. Well, we're gonna see if we can run that back with season 5. Hopefully. I mean, I've already started putting together predictions anyway. I mean, just based on things I've seen, and I hope some of them are wrong. But again, I mean, like, I don't really think I can really make real fair predictions at this point, just on behind the scenes, because it hasn't been edited to, have a chronological flow to it. But yeah, I'm very, very looking forward to that first teaser whenever we get it, whether that be Tudum or Stranger Things Day. It's going to be fun. It's going to be crazy. I know Brendan he's on standby, like probably right now, to begin editing something for season 5. And so I'm sure that as soon as it comes out, he's going to have it the next day. Yeah, I mean, obviously we could have gone on for like 5 more hours, but we'll save that. Again, like we said, we'll save that for another day. And hey, look, if any of you out there have any thoughts that you would like to share on season 4, like your final ones, before we get into season 5 content, before we get the season 5 content, look, send us an email or email us on Instagram, or not email us on Instagram, message us on Instagram, and let us know your thoughts, because we would love to share them on here and talk about them as well. I think it'd be kind of fun, because look, I know there are people out there who have criticisms of season 4 as we do, and they're not, I mean, I hope these aren't like, poo-pooing on the season, but just taking it from a an objective point of view, I'd say, just to talk about the good things and the bad things of season 4, because not everything is perfect. And so, yeah, just, hit us up. We love to hear your thoughts. Doesn't mean we, are going to agree with them, or you may not even agree with what we have had to say. But, yeah, I mean, it's always fun to talk about this show, and get all sorts of opinions and reviews on it, because, not everything is perfect, and neither is Stranger Things, but and I like it that way, because if this show was perfect all the time, it wouldn't be as fun to talk about, So the fact that there are some things out there to, be critical of, it makes things fun to talk about it. Yeah, it was fun to talk about the futures and careers that we think the characters could have, and give you our Beetlejuice 2 reviews and all that good stuff. It was really fun talking with you guys about that, and we hope you will tune in next time to the Ham Radio Podcast.
And that's our show. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Our theme music is provided by Neon Knights. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Please join us next time, same dial, same time.
Over and out.